Most Montrealers can't start their day without listening to her. My following guest has been in the media scene long enough to tell us what it takes to remain in the public eye.
Hi, I'm Natasha Gargiulo. I'm a TV and radio host here in Montreal, and I'm passionate about a lot of things, but right now, what matters to me is the city of Montreal, culture, food, empowering women, and my daughter.
Hi, Natasha.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me. I love the set.
Right? Isn't it so colorful?
Yeah, it's colorful and it's just a glam. It's very glam.
Yes,
a bit.
I love it. I always wanted to have a set that would match the kind of guests I would have on the show.
That's nice. So who has sat on this great couch?
So many women, I'm sure a lot of them that you know, especially since you've been in the media industry for so long, you come across so many characters, interesting characters, I could imagine.
I do. You know what, there's a lot of women, there's a lot of really successful and influential women who work in my industry, which is media, and it's great because it's such a good community of women who rally around each other and support each other, and when we actually see each other out in the field, we're out there supporting one another, asking each other what's next on the agenda. So it's really a great environment for us to be in.
Right.
Yeah.
And like you say, the women rally around each other, and that's not something I expected when I started the show. I didn't know what I would encounter. I didn't know if women would be supportive, or unfortunately there's a reputation of women being catty or competitive. So I didn't know. And my experience has been so positive, and all the women I've had on this couch have been inspirational, not just for the viewers, hopefully, but for me as well. And so supportive. A lot of the time, even after we're done filming, they're giving me tips about my career. And it's been so nice to see all these women helping each other.
Well, I mean, there's no reason not to, right? We've all started at the same point, and all of us have gone through that, you know, time where we're hustling and we're struggling, and we're trying to find, well, what's the next thing to keep us going, and what's the next job, or what's the next gig that we're going to get that's going to put us on that next level in our career. And essentially, all you really want to do is just succeed at the job that you really love. So if you can help someone give, you know, some tips on how to get through the industry and how to, you know, make it work for you, then why not? I mean, I had very influential women in my career who gave me wonderful advice on how to get to where I want in my life. And I think, you know, it's a competitive field, 100%. But it's also a very enriching field where I think a lot of women who are successful and are happy in the job that they're in don't mind giving their words of wisdom.
I think that's the key word. The women that are happy with who they are and what they do.
Yeah. You know, I mean, you have to reach a point in your life where you're loving what you do. And if you don't love what you do in your job, then maybe it's time to reevaluate it and think, okay, well, this is really not working for me. I don't wake up every day in the morning and say, I want to do this. So if you're not doing that, then find something that really makes you happy. And I think maybe sometimes it sounds cliche. A lot of people say it, but it's
a cliche because it's true.
It's true. It's absolutely true. And, you know, I started doing radio and television. I started interning, which means working for free. And not a lot of people want to work for free in life. But every day I woke up and said, this is what I want to do in my life. I'm going to make a career out of it. And if this is the steps that I need to take in order to be successful, I'm going to work for free. And you know what? Working for free was probably sometimes the most happiest days that I had working than at a 9-to-5 job in a cubicle, you know, on the phone,
doing something you don't want to do.
Doing something I hated doing. Right? And it gave me a paycheck where I would intern in the summer at a radio station at a younger time in my life. And I was just having the time of my life. Yeah.
And how did this all start? Because you also studied this. It seems to have been a pretty straight path to where you are now.
Yeah, you know what? I was always pretty determined and focused as what I wanted to do in life. I wanted to work in media. I didn't know what quite the capacity I wanted. I didn't know if I wanted to work behind the scenes or in front of the scenes, but I was always really curious about the medium, and I loved TV, and I always wanted to know how it worked. And my dad was on television when we were younger, and he was very popular in the Italian community here. And I remember watching him on television one day at a very young age, and I asked the question that I think every young child asks is, well, how did he get in there?
Right.
And that's just a curiosity that I always had is, okay, well, how does this work? What is he doing? And then I just fell in love with, news.
Okay.
And I fell in love with the way television was put together. And I loved watching entertainment shows, and I loved watching comedy shows and variety shows, and I just wanted to be a part of that industry, but I didn't know in what way. So I always knew I wanted to study in communication studies and figure out if it was film, radio, television, producing.
And you tried a few things within the media industry.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, the communication studies here at Concordia was just great because it gave you a taste of what, every medium was about: film, sound, TV, and then at that point you just, photography, and at that point you just decided what path you wanted to take. And at that point I knew, okay, you know what? I want to make television, or I want to make something really creative, and I want people to watch it, or I want to be a part of something that somebody watches.
Okay.
And TV was always my passion, but I got into radio first.
Right.
And at that point, you take anything you can because it's always a foot that leads you into,
a stepping stone.
A stepping stone that leads you into the next direction. And so my first job was actually in radio, and I was interning in radio at first, but I took it because I just felt, you know what, there's no one that's going to come to me and say, hey, I got a job for you. I'm going to put you on the radio. I'm going to give you your own show. I'm a nobody. And this girl born and raised in Montreal, coming out of school, you need to start somewhere, and you need to prove that you are really passionate about this industry. And although you know nothing, because as much schooling can provide for you, you really don't have any hands-on experience.
Oh, it's different.
You need
Learning
to get it.
about it and doing it, two different things.
So I knew that, and I just knew that I had to get some hands-on experience, and that's what I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so it started with the internship on the radio.
Yeah.
How did you go from the internship to the morning show on Virgin Radio?
It was a long journey. No, you know what? Everything I think in my life has been about timing.
Okay.
And I also feel that every time there was that moment where I felt frustrated and I didn't know if I could go on or this industry was for me, I felt, okay, just one more time. Just let me try one more time. And I was interning at a radio station. The radio station offered me a job in promotions. And I never wanted to work behind the scenes in radio. I enjoyed it, but I really wanted to try my talents at broadcasting and being on air. And I had a great boss at the time who told me, you know what? You want to go and play in the studio? Go ahead and play. It's your playground. Just go in there and explore it and see how you sound. Create a demo for me, listen to people at the station. And there were such great mentors at the station at the time who, again, would always just take me aside and give me some great advice, would listen to my demos, tell me what I had to improve on. And that's where it happened. And I started doing some shifts on the radio, and it just so happened that there was a producer in Montreal who was looking to create a documentary on the Italian community here. They were looking for a girl who was very, close to her roots in the Italian community. And I went for an audition.
And you got it.
That led me to a documentary in Montreal, which led me to a weather position on global television, which led me to entertainment on global television, which led me to being on a national entertainment show in Canada, which is ET Canada. And then the radio station, which I interned at so many years ago, ended up calling me saying, we want you back.
Oh, wow.
We want you back because I created this, I guess, niche for myself in a market that was unfortunately dying here in Montreal. Not the entertainment industry in Montreal, but the fact is that English television was cutting back budget-wise. And they weren't covering arts and entertainment or sports every day like they used to because of budget cuts. So I just said, well, I got to do something about this.
And you did.
And I did. And I did. Well, I think I did. I'm still working on it, right?
Well, I mean, that was going to be my next question in terms of staying. It's one thing to pierce through the industry, but what about staying in it?
Well, there's always going to be that girl.
What's your hustle?
My hustle. Every day I hustle. I think we always hustle, and when you stop hustling, it becomes boring. And when it becomes boring, then you're not interested anymore in what you do. And I think if you hustle, it's because you really love your job and you want it. And I've always wanted it. And I think right now in my life, I have a daughter, and there's a whole new perspective on what I want to do in this industry because of her. And I think, nowadays I want to make more meaningful television. I want to talk about more meaningful issues on the radio, things that are, you know, attracting me to other moms out there. And I think a way of staying relevant is always just reinventing yourself.
Right.
And seeing what stage you are in your life, not giving up what you love, but trying to figure out how you can relate to people who are still listening to you. Because you have haters and you have people who love you.
Right.
And you got to really see, okay, well, the people who love me, why do they like me and why are they following me? And you really got to appeal to that audience and find how to keep them following you all the time. So right now I'm at a stage in my life where I'm hosting a #1 morning show in Montreal. I'm on a national entertainment show in Canada, and I'm a mom.
Right.
And I want to merge those together and appeal to that audience.
And I think you do it beautifully. I mean,
Thanks, darling.
we were saying off the air about all the mommy bloggers, and I think the mothers are really relating to you. And I think one of the reasons are when you do mention your experience as a mother or your daughter on the show. I mean, I've heard you mention it on Virgin Radio. You do it in such a realistic way. You don't try to paint a pretty picture
Really?
of parenting.
Because it's the truth.
But that's what women relate to.
Well, because, you know, parenting is hard. Parenting is difficult. It's the best, I know, and again, this is going to sound cliche, but it really is. It's the best gig I've ever had in my life, and it will continue to be the best job I ever have in my life, being a mom. However, it's the most challenging and most difficult job I've ever had. And, you know, I'm not the way my mom was when she raised me. I don't know if you're like your mom, but I come from a generation where my mom was 100% full-time job being mom.
Right.
And nowadays, women,
Right, same here.
you know, women have many hats. Women have many jobs, and their job is being mom, being wife, being sister, being a career woman,
Right.
being a chef, you know, being scheduling, an assistant, an executive,
things.
all these things. And so how do we juggle it all? And to go out and say, everything is fine. It's not fine. It's not fine. You know
Those who
what?
say, I do this in my sleep.
I do this, you know, whether people have help or they don't, that's great. But you know, to talk about it, you realize that you're not alone. And I think I realized that at one point when I had my child, I was sitting there at 2:00 in the morning, and, you know, I was giving her a feeding, and I thought, am I the only one here? Am I the only one in this life that is doing this? No. So why aren't we talking about this stuff? Why aren't we being more open about the fact that motherhood is hard, and being a career woman and wanting your job as much as you want to be a mom, it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing to want both.
It's a good thing,
So
yes.
that's why I talk about it.
I think also when people look at you, they think, oh my gosh, she has a fabulous life. She looks fabulous. Everything must be pretty, you know, easy peasy. So it's a nice contrast to hear you, you know, describe such a realistic, you know, perspective of your life.
You know, like I said, every day is a hustle, and you should see my car. I've got like a couple of shoes in the back seat. I live out of my car, literally. I have clothing there, and you know, my house is a mess sometimes, and I used to be so preoccupied with everything being perfect.
Right.
And then I realized it doesn't have to be perfect, because the only thing that matters is that I am a good mom.
Right.
And I try to be. And I just want to be a really great role model to her, whatever that will be to her. And I really want to be successful in my job, because I think if I'm happy in my job, I will be a great mother to her as well.
Right, and it's a great example.
Yeah,
Definitely.
but I am not perfect. I don't know lots of women. You know what? It may appear that way, like but we're not perfect women.
Right. I would love to meet a perfect one, see what that's like.
You know what? We all go home at the end of the day, and we all deal with our mess.
Right.
And that's okay.
Right. That's what makes us human.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, you mentioned people who love you and who follow you, and then the haters.
Sure.
And trying to figure out those who do follow you, why it is. But what about the haters? What do you do with them? How do they inspire you?
It inspires you to keep on doing what you're doing, right? And it motivates you. But I mean,
they keep you on your toes.
They keep you on your toes. I mean, I remember when I first started off in this industry, I was telling you, you know, I literally came from graduating in university at Concordia. And then I started interning, and I was a no one, right? And I would go out there, and I got my first TV gig, and people were just very critical as to who I was and why I was on television and what was my background and why am I there. And, you know, I would be put out in a storm, a winter Montreal storm, and my scarf was blowing around, and people would email this news director and say, well, why is your scarf blowing around? And, you know, I think people like to criticize.
Right.
And that's okay, because you're not going to be liked by everybody. But I think the minute you realize it's okay that not everybody likes you is the minute that you're going to keep on being better at your job, because you can't please everyone.
It's impossible.
You can't. You don't like every show that's on primetime, right?
Right. No.
Okay, so you don't like every, you know, juice that's out there. But the fact is that you are who you are, and people like you, and the ones who don't, I'm sorry, I mean, right? If you don't, you have a choice.
Right.
And that's another thing. You have a choice. You have a choice to either keep listening or keep watching or change the dial.
Right.
And the fact is that they don't. So there's something about you that they like, or they just want to keep on picking on you. And that's okay. That's all right.
Now, what kind of advice would you give to women looking to pierce into the industry, trying to get their breakthrough?
Oh my goodness. You know what? I think network in this industry. Like you said, there are so many women in this industry, and all the women who have sat down on this couch, they've given you such great advice. And that advice is so valuable. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and don't be afraid to sit down with somebody who you admire or who you look up to or who you kind of have a curiosity about. Sit down with them and ask them questions.
Right.
Ask them how they started and feed off of that knowledge, and then, you know, make it work for you. There's nothing wrong with, you know, asking someone, can I just have a minute of your time? I really want to get into this industry.
Right.
I really want this job. How did you go about it? Because learning from their story will help you make yours.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But you know what? So many people are afraid of that. They're afraid to be a bother or to come off maybe insecure or unprofessional. They don't want to, they don't want to look like rookies maybe. So some people are afraid to ask questions.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Don't. Don't be afraid to ask, because if you don't ask questions, again, it's not going to work. It's not going to happen for you. If you're not curious about your job, if you're not curious about how the industry works, then how are you going to succeed at it? Another piece of advice that I would give anybody in any industry that they're going into is you have to do the work.
Right.
Nobody is going to do the work for you.
Do the legwork.
I know there's been a couple, there's been many people who have interned or shadowed me.
Okay.
And a couple of them were just totally turned off about the fact that I actually had to do a lot of work for this job. Okay. A lot of people think that being on television or on radio, it's a very glamorous job because you're either in front of a camera and you look great because, you know, you have a makeup artist and a stylist making you look good.
Right.
But the job really isn't about looking good. No. The job is about really up here, and the fact that you can make what you do seem natural.
Right.
And what you do catch the attention of so many viewers or catch the ear of so many listeners. And that's what the job is all about, is just being natural and being yourself.
Right.
But you have to be good at it. Right? And you have to know what you're
People
talking about.
will definitely tell you if you're not good
right,
at it.
Exactly. And you have to know what you're talking about. You
Yes.
can't go into an interview and not have any clue on who you're talking to or what their story is about. Mm-hmm. It won't work for you.
Right.
I don't know many people who are good at faking this type of job that we do.
No, it's not something you can fake.
Right.
There is a lot of legwork in the back.
Yep.
A lot of coordinating to do and research and reading.
A lot of hustling.
A lot of hustling.
There you go.
It.
There you go. But in the end, it's rewarding. You love what you do, and
exactly.
I'm sure you're very, and I mean this in a great way, but you're very in control of this show because you want to be successful at it.
Yes.
So, you're doing your own research, you're planning your own guests.
Right.
And
it's because it's my baby, it's a representation of me as well. So I definitely want to be involved in a lot of things.
Sure.
And but definitely some people think I just show up, I sit here and I smile at the camera.
No. But she probably does wake up looking like this.
I wish. I wish I tried. Maybe if I sleep in my makeup, I will.
That wouldn't be a good thing.
But yes, there's definitely more involved in it. But I love the challenges, and I find that the more you do it, the better you get at it. Like everything, practice makes perfect.
If you listen to my first day on air, it is so amateur. I'd say, who is that girl and why did you hire me? I sound terrible. But I mean, you know, it's just finding your comfort level and then just working with it and just trying to find who you are as a personality. Yeah.
See, on the camera, that's been more my comfort zone. Radio, I have just started to practice with that. And like I said off the air, the first time was a disaster. I could hear my voice and I kept thinking, my God, do I sound annoying? Is that what I sound like?
What does your husband think? I'm sure your husband thinks you sound great. But I think the first time you hear yourself, you're so critical of yourself, right?
Right.
And I think that's a good thing to be critical of yourself.
I was ready to hire a speech therapist.
Oh, stop. That's not true. Now you're really being hard on yourself. Not true, not at all. But I think we're all hard on ourselves when we first do it and we first hear ourselves or we first see ourselves on television, because we think, first, I don't look like that. And secondly, do I really sound that way? But then you just practice. Practice on what sounds comfortable to you. Yeah.
And I remember after that demo, I listened to your show. She sounds so great. She sounds like a natural.
Really? You know, thank you for saying that. But I really find that radio has made me become a more natural TV.
Oh, really?
Yeah. A TV presenter. And because the mediums are so different. In radio, you have literally 8 seconds to capture the attention of your listener, because after that 8 seconds, they're turning the dial.
Right.
So whatever comes out of your mouth, it's got to be great. It's got to be amazing, and they got to want to listen to you. So you have to keep your thoughts like little sound bites, and you got to think about whatever you're saying has got to be interesting and not long-winded. And it's not a visual medium.
Right.
You know, everything you're saying is people are listening to you.
It's
so
just
whatever
your voice.
It's
your
just
voice
your
and
voice.
your content.
Right. But radio has definitely made me more comfortable being on television, just because there's a lot less to worry about on radio.
Right.
So you become more comfortable with it. You become more comfortable with your speech, your tone, and you really are talking to your best friend. That's the best advice someone has ever given me, is you're not talking to millions of Montrealers. You're talking to that one friend of yours.
That's a good tip.
And actually, my program director had told me at one point, put a picture of somebody that you really feel comfortable with.
Do you? Do you have a picture in the booth?
No, I don't. But you know what? When I used to think of somebody that I was really comfortable talking to, and every time I would put the mic on, it would just be that one person.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
And I'd still do it sometimes. You know, if I've got a really, stressful interview, or if I'm talking to somebody who's very influential and it, gives me the little nerves.
Right.
I'll think of that person and just say, I'm just talking to that person.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great tip.
Well,
next time I get to do another radio demo, I will try that one.
I know. Some people say, imagine somebody naked, because it'll put a smile on your face. No, I imagine just someone I'm really comfortable talking to. Okay. And it seems to work.
Oh, amazing. Yeah. I'll try that. I'll let you know how that goes.
You got it.
Thank you so much,
You're
Natasha.
welcome.
I really appreciate you making the time and all the great tips you've just given us.
I don't know if they're great, but...
well, I'll be using them.
Oh, you will? Okay, great. Let me know how it goes. I hope it works better out for you.
I'm going to call you. That didn't work.
You can call me anytime.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being on the couch.
Thanks. I love it. Can we put our legs up?
And thank you to you guys for joining us on another episode of Couch Talk. And make sure you join us for the next one.